Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over the market. I'm looking at him. Simmons is reporting earnings today, down another 14%. Oof. But yeah, so let's see what happens. I'll give you my thoughts on Tesla moving forward as usual and all of that good stuff. And yet another pretty painful day in the market, of course, right? The market just is not happy lately, right? The market is definitely not happy lately. It's having a lot of problems, but we'll see how the day ends, right? So let's jump into it. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you do enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, I do share my thoughts with my members every single day. Obviously, especially sometimes even during these more tougher times. Now, again, just for transparency's sake, I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. If anyone claims that their membership, if you join their membership and suddenly, they'll never be wrong, run away, right? I'm not perfect. I will have things wrong, but the idea is to at least be either more right than wrong and at least show some, or at least talk about proper risk management, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So again, that's what I try to do. But all in all, that link is below for just $3 a month, where you get access to my mainly Tesla stocks, sometimes other stocks, of course, that I post here as well, updates constantly throughout the day as the market is trading, or for $5, access to everything that first tier for $3, but also access to my NVIDIA posts and updates if you're interested. But jumping into a Tesla closing the day down with an unfortunate 2.5%, and I say the word unfortunate because we were actually green briefly for the day. But and actually I should even argue, not argue, I should add rather that let me go ahead and remove all of these for now. Right, I should even add that pre-market we were green. We were green. Unfortunately, we gave up almost all of it. Right, you can see we sold off pretty much right as the market opened, and we were opening flat. And then we actually sold off all the way back down to this level of 325. Now this level is really important, and we'll go over everything and what I see moving forward for Tesla stock as per usual. Right, I'll always continue giving my personal thoughts and my genuine thoughts. Right, no bias. So what is the issue here? So I just want to reiterate something. This is something I shared with my members over the weekend on Saturday. I actually made a post saying, let me go ahead and scroll down. Where was that post on Saturday? I just want to show you guys. So obviously these are here. What bulls want to see, this is Saturday. What bulls want to see Monday is not a gap up, but in fact a gap down. Gap downs during downtrends is where bottoms can form. Now, obviously the word can, right? I mean, doesn't mean they will form, but if there were to be a bottom in the market formed, it is from a gap down. What did we get this morning? We got a gap up. We actually did get a gap up across the board in the market today. That's why I'm not confident. And that's why we essentially got this selling pressure even further, right? Again, when we're in a downward pressure, when the market in general is in this downward pressure and we're just, pretty much just selling off. And in this case, honestly, fairly aggressively, I would argue, for days in a row, you want a gap down. Gap downs is what creates bottoms. That's how you create bottoms. You get that extra fear in the morning, and then that's how you can get those reversal candles set up for the play, like on a daily chart, for instance. So the reason I bring this up is because Tesla, I mean, it did open the market technically with, flat. That actually sold off everything that it had gapped up right before the market opened. So it did technically open flat. But the main reason, and the reason I bring it up, is because I actually ended up fully exiting my position that I'm trading, of course. Not my long-term position, just my trading position. Not exactly at the top, obviously, but I think I exited at like 340. I think it was 343 and change, like 343.8, or it was something like that. Why did I exit it? I should just, again, for transparency's sake, why did I exit that position, right? For, okay profit. It was, something. It wasn't bad. It wasn't too bad. Because of the gap up, right? I don't like the fact that we gapped up, and better yet, check out where we found that resistance, even pre-market, right? Right at that 347-ish range, 347, 340. Remember that level I kept talking about that we broke down over here? We gapped up, and I assumed that it will be resistance, and it was, right? And the worst case scenario is it does get back up, and then I just rebuy on a potential retest on a breakout, essentially back into that area. It didn't. It ended up selling off. I ended up actually re-entering here, and I sold actually near the top as well. Now, again, I'm not trying to say this like I time things perfectly. Today, I just got very lucky. It's not always like that. Just for full transparency, today was just a good day for the trading on Tesla. It's not always like that. But the question is, of course, okay, well, why did I sell up here? Again, I'm just saying all these things just to explain why I'm being very cautious right now with my trades for a few reasons. If I bring out this, for instance, right here on the 1 hour time frame, you can see we were getting awfully close to reverting back to that market bias in the 1 hour time frame, right? That's number one. So I wasn't taking any chances, right? Again, this market, I'm not trusting this market right now. I ended up, exiting at, I think 336, I think it was. again, we were close to the mean reversion. I'm not trying to play with pennies here. Yeah, we can technically go a little bit higher to 340, but 337-ish is good enough for me, at least in this kind of market. But the main reason also is because we're still in a double downtrend. Now, what is this double downtrend? Well, first, on the 1 hour time frame or even the 4 hour time frame, you can see, well, essentially this red line, right? This red line is essentially a downtrend that we're in on the short term, right? We need to break above this. And essentially, while we're below this, I'm extra cautious with my trades, and I'd rather just re-enter at that point on an actual confirmed breakout. In this case, I'm just playing the short-term movements intraday, kind of like a mini day trade, honestly. But we want to go ahead and break out of this downtrend, right? Now, Tesla is setting up some good things. Now, the reason I even entered this morning also was because we are still technically setting up what could be a nice looking bullish divergence, where essentially we're making higher lows on the RSI, but even on this morning when we were down here, we were making higher lows, right? So that is a medium strength bullish divergence. Obviously a stronger bullish divergence is ultimately making lower lows on the stock, while RSI is essentially still making higher highs, but it is still a decent one, and we have essentially a double support around this area. We're obviously back down pretty damn close to it once again, but that is something to watch out for. But ultimately, the way I look at it is because we're in a double downtrend, even arguably a triple downtrend, being of course, let's say on the 4 hour chart, we're below the market bias, it's still red, right? We need to turn this thing back to green. That's number one. Number two, we're still in this little downtrend right here with this trend line. We need to break above that. At this point, that'll be sometime tomorrow, even like the low 340s, right? And of course, this sideways resistance level as well that resisted us in pre-markets, actually, 347, 348. Like, we need to break above these levels. At the very least, this like low 340s, which is this kind of 1 hour, 4 hour, whatever trend line right here, right? We want to break above this, which again is about 342 right now, but it's descending, so keep that in mind. So we want to break above these, right? That will give better confidence that not necessarily will go straight up right away. Then of course it's not that perfect, but it just should. It's almost like putting a bandage on the bleeding, right? Because right now we're just bleeding. Right now we're bleeding on this kind of smaller time frame, right? We're just bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, right? Breaking above this trend line, yeah, we can still technically hug the trend line and make its way down, kind of like the opposite of what Apple's doing on the daily. Let me show you an example of Apple, just pretty much the exact opposite. So you can see how Apple, right, it had this massive trend line, right? For instance, sometimes TA can be this simple, right? Massive trend line on Apple, right? It broke down below, came back up on earnings, retested that, came back, and now we can see, and this is the part I'm talking about, it's kind of hugging it, right? It's not really getting past it. It's just continuing to hug it and hug it and hug it and hug it. So, but the point is the fact that the upside, even though it is still technically going up, it's nowhere near as aggressive as it was right here, right? The upside is now being limited despite still technically, very slowly inching its way up. It's much more limited. It's almost like a reverse band-aid got put onto it, right? And that's kind of the idea with, in this case, Tesla stock, right? If we break above this trend line, yeah, technically speaking, we don't have to just rock it back up. We can technically break out, get to this area, get resisted, come back down, and then slowly bleed here. But the idea is the fact that it shouldn't be aggressive, number one, ideally, unless you break down back under, then that's pretty bearish. But it should also be a slow bleed, right? Again, it's like putting a bandage on, right? It slows down the bleeding until, of course, hopefully, fingers crossed, naturally, ultimately, we get that breakout. But we're not there yet. We need to see these kind of confidence type moves essentially on Tesla to happen, right? So that's kind of the more short term, right? And the more in the longer time frame, of course, we are still in this large downward wedge or channel. I'm not sure if it's a downward channel or a wedge. I'm not really sure which one it is. Right now I have it as a wedge. If it was a downward channel, you would pretty much take this, right? A wedge is essentially it's getting tighter, closer to the apex. A channel is essentially both the upper and bottom line are pretty much parallel to each other. And so in this case, you would draw it something like this. I'm not sure which one we're in, I'll be completely honest. No idea, nobody knows, right? But another tip is the fact that whenever you're in a downtrend, the bottom line is important, but what really matters in terms of recontinuing a move in the correct direction, if you will, in this case, back up, is the upper trend line, right? That's what really matters. This upper trend line is what we want to break, right? This one here is what we want to break in order to actually get a move back up, in order for Tesla to actually start making its way higher, ultimately, like overall. And the flip is true as well. If we're in an uptrend, for instance, remember that NVIDIA, in my NVIDIA videos, I was talking about it. Remember this little wedge here? This is the one that really matters. Yeah, this top one is good, but the bottom one is what really matters, because in an uptrend, the bottom trend line is the one that really matters, because once you break, you can see we ended up bleeding down even further, right? So again, watch for the mainly upper trend line, but it will take time for this to to play out, essentially, right? There's probably a lot of people bag holding over here because everyone and the mother was telling everyone to buy Tesla here. I was one of the few that wasn't, because the risk just wasn't there. The risk reward just, to me, wasn't there. But moving forward with Tesla stock, where can it go next from here? Well, as long as we do not I feel like this is more of a tutorial video as opposed to like actually telling you where I think it's going. I kind of went on and on and on, but TLDR, where is it going next, right? Well, best case scenario is a move back up. I mean, best case scenario is obviously a move back up to about the 370s to essentially retest this trend line and market bias on the daily. Short term, we want to obviously break above these trend lines, right? So about 342, and then obviously the next one will be 347/8. We want to break above these two resistance points. Now, on to the downside, we still have support here at around 325, give or take, of course, right? That's number one as a support. Number two as support, if we do break down below essentially 2 days low, you don't want to break 2 days low, but if we break 2 days low, the first level will be potentially a quick snap to this gap fill at 321, and we'll see how we react there. There is a chance that this ends up being a massive liquidity sweep. We get down here, we get a massive liquidity sweep, gap fill, and then we come back up, similar to that Nike move I showed you guys the other day, where I had a bit of a liquidity sweep down here, you can see, and then it just pretty much rocketed back up, right? That is a potential, right? You don't know, right? You don't know. Like, we don't know which one it'll be. We just don't know. That's why, patience in these kind of situations, sometimes, it's important. It is important. And, sometimes even I make these mistakes and I enter too quickly, right? Thinking I can time the bottom. And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And when you don't, it hurts a lot more than, it hurts essentially when you don't, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But if we do lose this low and it ends up not being a liquidity sweep, so essentially we don't get back above this 325 level, assuming we close a daily candle below it within a day or two, essentially, that most likely confirms a move back down at the very least to the bottom of the wedge, worst case scenario to the bottom of the channel, which will be a lower target. But regardless, both targets should yield closer to about $300 per share, which is also where that 200 EMA is going to be roughly sitting at, currently in the low, like pretty much at $300 per share. Worst case scenario, if we're actually following the channel as opposed to the wedge, which will be this line here. So I'll remove this one for now. It looks something like this. Worst case scenario, I still see a move all the way back down to about $280 per share. That to me is like worst case scenario. Like if shit hits the fan essentially, and things really just don't go well or whatever the case may be, worst case scenario I still view is about $280 per share, which is going to be about a 15% move to the downside, which would be a massive retest, which a lot of people are eyeballing this level, which is why I'm not sure. I remember talking about this level quite a while ago, and sometimes they take a long time to come back down to, and maybe we will now finally. But this is technically the best level to buy Tesla at. Like if, and this is a big if, we don't know, but if Tesla does make its way back down to $280 per share, roughly, of course, give or take, naturally, right? It's not exactly 280, it could be slightly lower, it could be slightly higher, 290, who knows? But around there, around 280. This would be that absolutely phenomenal opportunity, right? This would be it. Nobody knows if it'll get there, which is why it's important to either, number one, be patient, or number two, scale in properly. Don't just all in, not financial advice, but you don't just all in 100% of your allocation right here, right now, and pray for the best. Maybe it'll work out. If it doesn't, it's going to hurt. So it's always better to have at least that risk management to scale in. Maybe if you want to put in, say, $10,000 into Tesla, maybe buy 3 now, maybe buy 3 down at 300, and maybe buy the last, 3 to 4 or whatever it is at 280. Just as an example, right? Just as an example. But yeah, so that's kind of my thought process on Tesla right now, moving forward. So let's see how it plays out. We're in a very wild spot in the markets right now. So again, it's, you don't want to go too aggressive, right? Options flow is pretty bearish for this week, unfortunately. So we could see a bit more downside, unfortunately, for Tesla stock. So let's see how it plays out. Yeah, the only position I have right now in Tesla stock in terms of trading, of course, I have my long-term positions from like 160 or something like that down here, which I don't touch. I don't even look at them. I'll be honest. I don't even want to look at that account. The only position I have is a stall put. Like I have one cash secured put on Tesla stock. I think it's like 315 or something like that. And yeah, I mean that's maybe where I will restart my position, and if we get down to 315, guess what? I'll sell another cash secured put down to 290, and that'll be my second position. You know what I mean? So let's see. But again, the market's very finicky. It's very, very aggressive. It's not happy, clearly. So, these kind of times require at least some level of patience. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.